tell you this part. Not in the brochures, not in the orientation speeches, not in the smiling faces that promise safety, growth, and a future carefully designed for you. Because if they did, you would never walk through those doors again. There's a moment, just before something breaks, when reality feels slightly off. Not enough to alarm you, just enough to plant a seed, a quiet distortion, a subtle wrongness, like the world is still functioning, but something inside it has shifted its gaze toward you. Most people ignore that feeling. That's their first mistake. You're about to hear 3 stories, real events, real people. But understand this, what matters isn't just what happened, it's why it happened. Because these aren't just random incidents. They are fractures in a system that was never as controlled as you were told. Places designed for learning, quietly becoming places of observation, testing, and sometimes something far darker. You think schools are safe because they're structured. Timetables, rules, surveillance, authority. But structure doesn't eliminate danger. It hides it. And once you see it, once you understand how thin that illusion really is, you won't be able to unsee it. The first story begins in a place that should have been predictable, controlled, almost boring. A dorm room. 2 people. 1 shared space. Locked doors. Assigned identities. Documented presence. Safe. That's what she believed, until something started sitting on her bed when no one else was awake. At first, it was small, barely noticeable, the kind of thing your brain explains away to protect you. Fatigue, stress, imagination. But the body knows. The body always knows before the mind catches up. Pressure, weight, presence, not imagined, measured. Something was there. And here's where you need to pay attention, because here's where most people fail to understand what's really happening. Fear doesn't arrive all at once. It escalates, gradually, deliberately, as if something is testing your awareness, measuring your reaction, learning how close it can get before you break. That's not chaos. That's behavior. And behavior means intent. So when she felt the mattress sink deeper the second time, when the weight wasn't just at the edge, but fully beside her, that wasn't the beginning. That was already too late. Because by then, something had already decided she was worth approaching.
The second time it happened, it stayed longer. That's how you know it wasn't random. Random things don't repeat with precision. They don't evolve. They don't adjust their intensity like they're studying you. But this did. She returned the same way she always did. Early morning, body heavy with exhaustion, mind still drifting between sleep and awareness. Routine is a powerful drug. It convinces you that what happened before was meaningless, because nothing should happen twice. But reality doesn't care about what should happen, only what does. She lay down, closed her eyes, let the silence wrap around her, and then it came back. Not gently this time. The mattress didn't just dip at the edge, it sank beside her, as if something had committed its full weight to the space, close enough to feel, close enough to touch. And still, she didn't move. Understand this moment. This is where instinct and conditioning collide. Every part of her body was screaming to react, to turn, to look, to confront whatever was there. But something deeper held her in place. Fear, yes, but also something else. A quiet, paralyzing awareness that looking might make it worse. Because as long as you don't confirm it, you can still pretend it isn't real. But the body doesn't pretend. She felt it shift, rise, leave the bed, and then a sound, a drop to the floor. Not imagined, not subtle, a clear physical impact, something with weight, landing. Now think about that. Her bed was elevated, high enough that she needed a step stool to climb into it. That means whatever was beside her didn't just disappear. It got up, and it stepped down, into the room, into her space. At that point, the illusion should have shattered completely, but the human mind is fragile in a very specific way. It will cling to the safest explanation, even when the truth is standing right next to it. She turned, slowly, carefully. Her roommate was in bed, facing the wall, still, silent, exactly where she should have been. And that's when the real question begins. If the only other person with a key was exactly where she was supposed to be, then who was just sitting beside her? Or maybe the better question is, how close can something get to you before you finally accept that it was never supposed to be there at all? By the third time, it stopped pretending. Patterns reveal intent, and intent, when left unchecked, evolves into escalation. That's the rule. She knew something was wrong now, not in a vague, dismissible way, but in that quiet, suffocating certainty that settles in your chest when your reality starts slipping out of your control. And still, she went back. Because that's what people do. They return to the environment that's breaking them because it's familiar, because it's expected, because walking away would mean admitting that something impossible is happening. So she entered the room again. Same door, same key, same silence waiting on the other side. But this time, something was different. Her roommate wasn't facing the wall anymore. She was facing her. Still, quiet, eyes closed, or at least appearing to be. There's a detail most people overlook in moments like this. The body can fake stillness. It can mimic sleep. But there's always something slightly off, a tension in the muscles, a presence behind the stillness, like something is aware even when it shouldn't be. She ignored it, climbed into bed, closed her eyes, because if she acknowledged it, if she let the thought fully form, then everything would collapse. 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes of forced calm before reality tore through the illusion again. The mattress dipped, not at the edge, not beside her, but closer, deliberate, precise, as if whatever this was had learned exactly where to position itself. Her breathing stopped, her body locked, and then contact. A hand on the back of her neck. Not squeezing, not aggressive, just resting there. Do you understand how controlled that is? Violence is chaotic, it's loud, it's immediate. But this was measured. A test, pressure without force, presence without action. Like something was studying her response, mapping her fear, deciding what to do next. Time stretched. Seconds felt like hours. Her mind spiraled through every possible explanation, each one collapsing faster than the last. Sleepwalking, hallucination, stress. None of them accounted for the precision. None of them explained the timing, the repetition, the control. And deep down, she knew that. Because her body wasn't reacting to confusion anymore. It was reacting to threat. Eventually, the hand lifted. The weight disappeared. The bed rose back to normal. And just like that, it was gone. But here's the part that matters most. She didn't turn around immediately, because something inside her understood a truth most people never articulate. If she looked too soon, she might catch it not pretending anymore. And some things, once seen clearly, don't let you go back to who you were before.
She lasted longer than most would have. That's important to understand. Most people break at uncertainty. They panic early. They react fast. But she didn't. She endured it, rationalized it, contained it, until containment was no longer possible. Because fear, when it crosses a certain threshold, doesn't stay internal. It forces action. She left. Not dramatically, not screaming, not making a scene. She just walked out. But inside, something had already collapsed. The illusion of safety was gone, the trust in her environment gone, and once that foundation cracks, everything built on top of it starts to feel unstable. Even daylight. Even normal conversations, even silence. She called her mother, not because she needed comfort, but because she needed confirmation, someone outside the environment, someone untouched by whatever was happening in that room. She told her everything, every detail, the pressure, the movement, the hand. And here's where it gets interesting. Her mother didn't dismiss it, didn't laugh it off, didn't say you were just tired. Instead, she escalated it, reported it. That tells you something, because when someone hears a story like that and takes it seriously, it means one of two things. Either the story is convincing enough to break logic, or they already understand that things like this don't always have simple explanations. The school responded quickly. Room change, immediate. No investigation, no confrontation, no deep questioning, just removal. That's not how institutions usually operate. They like documentation, process, evidence. But this was quiet, efficient, almost like they didn't want to look too closely. And that raises a different kind of question. Not what happened in that room, but how often has something like this happened before? Because systems move fast unless they recognize a pattern, and patterns mean history. She was relocated, New room, new space, new environment. Safe again, at least on the surface. But here's the part no one prepares you for. Leaving the place doesn't mean leaving the experience. Because once your perception shifts, once you realize that something can exist that close to you without explanation, you don't just go back to normal. You start noticing things, small things, details that didn't matter before. Like the way her old roommate used to talk, the way she mentioned having the room to herself before she arrived, the way she casually admitted that someone else had been there and didn't stay long. No reason given, just absence. And now that absence started to feel a lot less random, because maybe she wasn't the first one to feel something sit on that bed, and maybe she wasn't the first one who left without fully understanding why. Once you step outside the experience, your mind starts rebuilding it, piece by piece, detail by detail. Not to understand it, because some things resist understanding, but to contain it, to shrink it into something manageable, something explainable. That's what she tried to do. She told herself it was stress, lack of sleep, a misfiring brain under pressure, maybe even a form of waking dream, something science could eventually label, categorize, and file away neatly. But then the details started pushing back, the things that didn't fit, like the drawer. A small, forgettable moment at the time, the kind of thing you don't question because it seems too ordinary to matter. But memory doesn't prioritize what's important. It stores everything. And later, it lets the pieces rearrange themselves. She remembered the day her roommate opened that locked drawer, casually, like it was nothing. Inside, bottles, multiple, not one or two, 10, prescription medication, stacked, organized, hidden. And when asked about it, the answer came quickly, too quickly. A skin issue. Simple, dismissive, closed. That's how deflection works. It gives just enough information to stop questions without offering anything real. Now think about the pattern. A previous roommate who didn't stay. Unusual behavior. Silence, distance, observation, and then physical interaction in the middle of the night. Measured, controlled, repeated. You could call it coincidence, but coincidence doesn't build structure. This had structure, which means it had intent, and intent always leads back to one question. Was this something happening to her, or something being done by someone else? Because if it was the roommate, then you're not dealing with something unknown. You're dealing with something far more dangerous, something conscious, something aware, something capable of waiting, watching, testing boundaries without ever fully revealing itself. And if it wasn't the roommate, then the situation becomes something else entirely, something that breaks the rules most people rely on to feel safe. Either way, the conclusion leads to the same place. She wasn't alone in that room, not in the way she thought, not in the way she was told. And once that realization fully settles in, once you accept that your environment can be compromised without your knowledge, you start asking a different kind of question. Not what happened, but what else have I been wrong about?
Closure is a lie people tell themselves. Because the truth is, Most experiences like this don't end cleanly. They don't resolve. They don't hand you a clear answer and let you walk away untouched. They linger. They follow, not physically, but mentally. And sometimes, that's worse. Days passed in the new room. Nothing happened. No pressure on the mattress. No unexplained sounds. No presence creeping into the edges of her awareness. Everything was normal. Too normal. And that's the problem. Because once your perception has been altered, normal doesn't feel safe anymore. It feels temporary, like something is waiting for the right moment to remind you that it never really left. But she forced herself forward. Classes, conversations, routine, rebuilding the illusion, until something pulled her back. A message, simple, direct, from her old roommate. Come get your things. That's all it said. No emotion, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a request. And here's where most people would make a different choice. They'd ignore it, ask someone else to retrieve their belongings, avoid the space entirely. But she didn't, because part of her needed to go back. Not for the items, for something else. Control. When something disturbs your reality, there's a deep psychological need to face it again, on your own terms, to prove to yourself that you're not powerless. So she returned. Same hallway, same door, same key. It still worked. Think about that. No restrictions, no lock change, no barrier. The system allowed her to walk right back into the place where something had already gone wrong. That's not protection. That's indifference. She stepped inside. Empty. Silent. Relief, but thin, fragile. She moved quickly, grabbed her things, avoided looking around too much, as if the room itself held memory. And then, something shifted. Not in the room, behind her. She turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway. No sound, no warning, just present, watching. There's a specific kind of fear that hits in moments like this. Not loud, not explosive. Cold, calculated. Because now, this isn't something happening in the dark. This is direct, visible, real. They made eye contact. She smiled. A reflex, a mask, something to fill the silence. But the roommate didn't respond right away. She just stood there, studying. And then she asked a question that didn't belong in that moment. Where's your new room? Not, are you okay? Not, why did you leave? Not even curiosity masked as politeness. Just location. Direct. Focused. Repeated. She pressed. Again and again, different variations of the same question, trying to narrow it down, trying to map it. And that's when something became painfully clear. This wasn't concern. This was tracking. And in that moment, the fear changed, because whatever had been happening before might not have been over at all.
There's a moment when instinct overrides everything else. Not logic, not politeness, not fear of seeming rude or paranoid, just instinct. And in that doorway, standing inches from someone who had already crossed invisible boundaries, she felt it clearly for the first time. This wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't something to figure out. This was something to escape. The questions kept coming. Which floor? Near the stairs? The front? Each one sharper than the last, each one narrowing the distance between curiosity and intent. And she realized something most people realize too late. Information is access. The moment you give the wrong person the right detail, you open a door they don't need a key for. So she lied. Not once, repeatedly. Different answers, vague directions, half-truths stitched together, just enough to sound believable, but not enough to be useful. And the entire time, she could feel it. That subtle shift in energy when someone knows they're not getting what they want. The silence stretched, heavy, uncomfortable, watching, measuring. Then she moved, stepped past her, walked out, didn't look back. Because some part of her understood a rule that isn't taught, but learned the hard way. The longer you stay in proximity to something that doesn't feel right, the more you lose control. She left the building, heart steady, but only because she forced it to be. And that was the last time she ever saw her. No confrontation, no explanation, no closure, just distance, permanent. But the story doesn't end there, because endings aren't defined by physical separation. They're defined by understanding. And in the days that followed, the pieces settled into place. The previous roommate who didn't stay long, the hidden medication, the silence, the distance, the late-night absence followed by unexplained presence, the precision of those moments on the bed, the control, the patience. Her mother said something that stayed with her, something simple but heavy. She was seeing how close she could get before you reacted. Think about that. Not if she could, how close. That means repetition, testing, progression. And that final moment, the hand on her neck, might not have been the peak. It might have been the edge. The moment right before escalation, before something irreversible. And that's the part most people don't want to accept. Sometimes you don't escape something because you figured it out. You escape because you left just before it decided to go further. So here's the truth you need to take with you. Not every threat looks like a threat. Not every danger announces itself. Some of them sit quietly, watch you, learn you, wait. And by the time you realize what's happening, they're already closer than they should ever be. Close enough to touch, close enough to test, close enough to decide what happens next. And if you've been paying attention, you already understand the real lesson. Trust the moment something feels wrong, because sometimes that feeling isn't fear, it's awareness trying to keep you alive.